When you said settlers, did you mean when you said that? Is that like when you got the S words confused? My question is, how come every time it's black and brown pride, it's when y'all want black people to do some shit? It's like, what if, hear me out, what if when white people tried to sell you whiteness and anti-blackness, you said no, and then you was like black and brown pride? But now it just seems like, hey guys, hey you one racial group of people. You know how they always treated you like shit? Well, they treating us like that now, and we don't like it very much. And since you know how it feels, do you mind helping us? Like, is that okay? Like, could we be friends? Could we be black and brown? But it's like, but black people have been saying this for forever. I know, but they didn't treat me like that. Like, that's what y'all saying. Like, no. I know you've been complaining about this for years, but I wasn't a part of that. So I didn't say nothing. But now that I am, you want to protest? Like, is everybody okay?
That video is a reaction to a native woman whose video has been going viral on TikTok for calling African Americans settlers. She said that colonization affects a lot of people, but saying that they are colonized is erasing the fact that there are some people who are settlers. And she also stated that Black Americans always claim to be the indigenous people of the land. If we remember clearly, these people were forced into this land. These people were brought in against their own will. Our video sparked a very good learning moment because we know that it can actually be freaking like triggering hearing someone call them settlers. But at the end of the day, the response to her video has been kind of a learning moment if you actually watch and listen to what these people are saying. Her video has been deleted. She deleted the video and she made an apology video stating that maybe settlers is not the right word to use in that context. The first video went freaking viral and people are reacting to it, and in all of that, there is a learning moment because there's so much thing to learn when these people respond. So without wasting much time, let's get straight into what the people are saying. Then we come back, talk about it, and as well go through some comments.
Black people truly have no allies, and solidarity is really out the window in my mind for everyone under the POC umbrella. But especially when it comes to black people, it appears that we are just the can everybody wants to kick around. A Native woman came online and said that black people are settlers. We are the settlers under the settler colonialism.
Black Americans' claim of being the original indigenous people of this land was actually somewhat predicted in this article. There are differences between being oppressed and being a settler. If people are unable to distinguish between the two, then they sing Black Americans, but also other settler immigrants. It is a fact that we are all affected by colonization, but by saying that we are all colonized, the implication is that no one is a settler, which can ignore the fact that some people of color can still be settlers on indigenous land.
You may be thinking to yourself, how does that make any sense? Because a native definitely knows that African Americans are a product of enslaved people. But she's tying it to all those pretendians who saying that they're the original inhabitants of this land. They're the original Indians. They're the natives of this land, even though that's not all of us. So to take a claim that's made by a small percentage of black people in this country and then say that all black people are settlers is really crazy. Settler colonialism is a logic and structure using colonial rule to overtake an environment and replace it with your own people and replace the indigenous people, which has happened here. Black people did not settle in America by choice. Anybody that has settled around the world under the imperialistic guise that happened during the Great Scramble for Africa, for China, India, Australia, and Americas, that was Europeans. We did not settle here. We were forced here by slavery, a system of slavery, one of the biggest migration of human bodies in human history. And we then spent hundreds of years here under forced labor, while at the same time, I can hold two truths. At the same time, your ancestors were killed, were taken out by biological warfare, your land was stolen, there were land grabs, you were forced into settlements, you were forced into containment areas. That is true, but we didn't do that. We didn't take your land over. If anything, the Malian kingdom definitely visited America hundreds of years before Europe. Scandinavians visited the America hundreds of years before Columbus. But The French, the Dutch, the English, they stayed. The Spanish, they stayed. This conversation is crazy. I feel like every day there's always something new that's coming up about Black Americans that people feel the need to use us to drive their point home. Two things can be true. This can be your land, you can be colonized, you can be displaced, and settlers took your land. I can be the product of colonialism by forced migration and slavery. Wow. Because the pretendians are coming online saying that they're the natives, you're saying that we all are settlers. I've heard it all.
Black Americans claim of being the original indigenous people of this land.
Disclaimer, this creator has apologized for claims made in this video about African Americans being settlers. But I do just want to make a point about some of the things I've been saying about how deeply rooted anti-Blackness can be. That opening statement that African Americans claim to be the indigenous people of this land is really interesting because if you are in African American spaces, if you know African American people, you know how much of a pariah the pretendians are. You know exactly how much they are shunned. And even if you find one such person talking about being indigenous, you'll see the comments. And the comments are other African Americans being like, be for real, be serious, stop, 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 stop. It's this thing where I've said that Black people know how to hold our own accountable. We are in the comments, we're like, hey, please stop doing that. But for some reason, there's this pervasive idea that Black people are never held accountable for anything, which then encourages people to make these wide, sweeping, scathing statements about minority groups that are already being handled. The pretendians are such a fringe of African American community and society that it would be strange to build up an entire argument against them and how they are systemically causing harm because they don't have even the numbers to do so. They're just people stuck in their own delusions, rooted also in extreme Afrophobia. So I just want to encourage people to be in community with Black people. You hear Black people already have a lot of critiques about ourselves first. And if you're not sure, instead of making bold statements, just ask or be like, hey guys, how common is this? People will be willing to tell you. And even in the follow-up, people are super understanding towards her and just totally forgiving of that original claim because they understand where she was coming from by discussing how, yes, even though African Americans are brought here forcefully, they still live on indigenous land that was stolen from indigenous people. That is very, very true. So we get that part, but they're not settlers. So this is your Saturday morning reminder to just get in community with Black people.
Not just race. People of color can be both oppressed and settlers at the same time, depending on the context.
Wait a minute, what? So basically you're coming for African Americans because you all were promised equal power in your treaty that has not been acknowledged and has not been honored. And that's somehow our fault? This content creator made a video essentially saying that Black people benefit from colonialism. Ain't that some bullshit? Why the fuck people just don't leave us alone? How the fuck we benefit from something where we were brought here against our will? Not only that, we were murdered, we were raped, we were eaten, we were beaten, we were slaughtered, we were fed to alligators. And you're saying that we benefited from colonialism, and we still do, because we have jobs and have homes and have land and we work and we get benefits from the government and pay taxes. So we're the enemy now? It seems like your problem is with the wrong persons. It seems like you don't want to offend your oppressor because somehow, some way, you really still feel like there's an opportunity in y'all having equal rights and equal power over the United States. And I'm here to tell you, boo-boo, that's not going to happen. I promise you that. It seems like y'all, in the time, your ancestors should have fought a little bit harder. To keep what was rightfully yours. You want them to restore sovereignty. That doesn't have to be restored if y'all just fought a little harder. Don't you think so? Now you see how crazy that sounds when your ancestors were beaten, raped, murdered, and things were stolen from them? Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? We were taken from West Africa and our land was taken over. Have you ever heard of Mansa Musa? He was the richest, wealthiest person in the world that ever existed. Our ancestors were stripped of their wealth. They were stripped of their resources, and we were bought here through our ancestors. And then you go on to say in your video, well, I don't feel like y'all should have to leave the United States. I don't feel like you should have to leave the land. Bitch, we're not. We built this shit. For you to sit up here and say, well, I just had trouble trying to phrase it the right way. Maybe you should redo some research. Maybe you should keep your mouth shut before you get on this platform and say the most ignorant shit that you could ever think of. It is not our fault that y'all were not given equal power as stated in your treaty, and you want your sovereignty to be restored. Mind you, you all got reparations. You all get Native American TANF and Native American stamps. And you have had decades upon decades of settlements, decades upon decades of reparations. Your family is set for life. Your kids are set for life. We weren't given anything. And whenever we say anything about it, it's, oh, you're throwing the black card, you're throwing the race card. And for you to say the oppressed are settlers, girl, get the fuck out my face. Respectfully, please.
First, you got the dummies who say Harriet Tubman don't exist, and now Black Americans are settlers. They're settlers. Why do we get brought up into everything? Fuck. Because I know for sure, I have never, ever laid claim to a land that is not mine. My ancestors are not native to this land because they were stripped of their titles, their names, their personhoods, dragged across oceans, thrown over ships, enslaved, raped, murdered, tortured. So yeah, I don't think me being a descendant of that, it makes the settler term fitting. I just don't understand how time and time again, Black Americans and Black American history keeps being brought up and demonized like we did it. If we had a choice to remain in our native area, we would have. We didn't have a choice. Settlers implies consent. Please understand that.
When you said settlers, did you mean when you said that, is that like when you got the S words confused? My question is, how come every time it's Black and brown pride, it's when y'all want Black people to do some shit? It's like, hear me out, what if when white people tried to sell you whiteness and anti-Blackness, you said no, and then you was like Black and brown pride? But now it just seems like, hey guys, hey you one racial group of people, you know how they always treated you like shit? Well, they treating us like that now, and we don't like it very much. And since you know how it feels, do you mind helping us? Like, is that okay? Like, could we be friends? Could we be Black and brown? But it's like, but Black people have been saying this for forever. I know, but they didn't treat me like that. Like, that's what y'all say. I'm like, no. I know you've been complaining about this for years, but I wasn't a part of that. So I didn't say nothing. But now that I am, you want to protest? Like, is everybody okay? I just think, be honest. Say, hey, we bought the anti-Blackness guys. We bought it. They finessed us. They got us too. Fuck. Can't trust them. Like, you know what I mean? Be honest. And I think we'll get further. But calling Black Americans settlers, I don't know if that's the way. I don't know if that's the most effective route. You know what I mean?
Black Americans' claim of being the original indigenous people of this land.
Hey, guys.
Mind your business. Mind your business. Mind your business. Your community has too many problems, right? I need you to mind your business. It comes off racist, okay, because a lot of your people are racist. They don't like Black people, and they allow for white people with blue eyes and blonde hair to say that they're Native American, and they don't blink an eye. A lot of y'all people do that and then be up there saying racial slurs to Black people and stuff like that. Y'all got some nasty words towards Black people. Mind your business. You're dead wrong. Stop speaking on Black American history. Nothing, all our theories is not going to hurt your community. You need to worry about the YT people that's snatching y'all babies off y'all reservations. Mind your business. You got bigger fish to fry. Trump is literally going on your, Trump got ICE raids happening on y'all lands. Going up to y'all reservations, still snatching y'all babies out the homes. Y'all barely have running water. The ghetto communities in the Black community versus the ghettos in the Indian communities is two different things. Yeah, Black people be suffering, but the suffering amongst Native Americans is ridiculous. It's so bad. Like it's fractions of people who don't even think that y'all exist. Don't even think y'all are real. I need y'all to be so for real. Mind your business. Because you sat here and tried to make it seem like black people as a whole have the power to be settlers. You need to mind your business. Worry about your own community. Now you're stressed. Black people leaned on you intellectually. Because we're all not a monolith. And then on top of that, your people have a history of enslaving black people. Mind your business.
Black people truly have no allies, and solidarity is really out the window in my mind for everyone in the POC umbrella, especially when it comes to black people. It appears that we are just the can everybody wants to kick around. A Native woman came online and said that black people are settlers. We are the settlers under the colonialism.
Black Americans claim of being the original indigenous.
Hey, my name is CJ and I'm finna cook you. Now, I'm not even gonna disagree with you for your perspective and you having the perspective that black people are indeed not settlers, because you are valid in that perspective. But you're not valid in saying that, A, black people have no allies and black people only have each other in the fight for liberation, because that is not true. Black and indigenous solidarity goes back literal centuries. And I disagree with your perspective, because when you take it out and you look at the whole perspective of black people's function within the United States of America, the indigenous creator was right, even though they were conflating pretendians and just regular everyday black people. Now, when we use words, they can have different connotations and different meaning for different discussions that we're having. So when we're talking about the connotation of being a settler, we have to realize that black people's function intentionally when they were brought here was to be enslaved people, cattle, and to dehumanize them. But we see that the maintenance of the colonial order, and the only reason why we have the United States of America, and the thing and the system that keeps the colonial in order, is the dispossession and the ethnic cleansing and the genocide of indigenous people from their lands. So African Americans, in the context of being brought over here and the proliferation of black people's existence within this nation, came with the context of us not being settlers. You see that these discussions get extra complex when you also have indigenous tribes, 5 indigenous tribes that enslaved black people during the antebellum period in the South. But you will realize that the indigenous people weren't actually the ones that were controlling this system, and they were not the main players in this game. The main players in this game were the white aristocratic capitalists. This is kind of the same thing with black people being settlers and black people's role in dispossessing indigenous people in their lands and from their lands with things such as the Buffalo Soldiers. You will see that the system intentionally uses non-white people to carry out their dirty work and to carry out their missions of settler colonialism. And I think this is where we get the discussion of intent versus impact. So when it comes to the Buffalo Soldiers on the Western frontier, their intent probably was not to aid and abet in the genocide of indigenous people. Their intent was to be free from slavery. But due to manipulation by white supremacy, these newly freed slaves were intentionally put on the front lines of the Western frontier to fight for America. This fight for America included the scalping and the unaliving of hundreds of indigenous people and dispossession of their land. So you can say in this context, the Buffalo Soldiers were actively contributing in settler colonialism and were settlers, because the impact of what they did was greater than the whole picture of what they wanted to do in the first place. This conversation gets even more complex when you realize that there was a minute slave-owning class of black people that actually enslaved black people on plantations. So we can see the existence of the black bourgeoisie existing forever since our existence in this country. And that rather these systems are more complex than we actually give them credit for, and it's not as A and B as we think it is. As African Americans, we need to realize at the end of the day, this is not our land. The indigenous people of Turtle Island are the final arbitrators of what happens to this land. And the way that black people are used to further settle colonialism makes this conversation, again, even more complex. I believe that if a black person was to take on the mission of the empire and wants to see the proliferation of the American empire and is buying into the empire's lies, this essentially makes them a settler. So for people like me, the house that I live in, this is not my land. So I acknowledge that indigenous people lived here centuries before I was even thought of. This is why, to rid ourselves of the title of settler, we have to actively contribute to indigenous liberation and land back. We have to intentionally call out our complicity and our roles in indigenous genocide and ethnic displacement. We have to call out our complicity in this system. We're all complicit in this system that manufactures genocide and ethnic cleansing of both black and indigenous people domestically and abroad. This is one of the nastiest ways that colonialism manifests itself, because it's not only physical, economical, it's also mental. So people can become mentally colonized and do the work for the colonizer. This is why you see black soldiers fighting in the IOF or fighting in the military. When you become a black military serviceman, you essentially become a colonizer, settler, and imperialist. So if we can acknowledge that black people can become imperialists, we can also acknowledge that black people can indeed become settlers once we start to buy into the idea of America itself. We have to realize that even though this predicament that we're in is not to our own fault, is because of white supremacy, we still have to do the work to uproot the empire and be as anti-empire as possible. We have to be as anti-colonialism as possible to see our liberation. Indigenous liberation is black liberation is indigenous liberation, because you do indeed have black indigenous people. So let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, because like I said, this conversation is indeed very nuanced, complex, and multi-layered.
What do you guys think about the woman's video? I really wish I could get the full content of her video, because over and over again, she kept calling Black Americans settlers. And that's why I said it can actually be triggering when it's not even said just once, but repeated couple times, like it is what it is. Even in some of the clips I saw, she had stated that yes, they can be oppressed and be a settler at the same time. Like colonization affected so many people, but under that as well, there are some people who are settlers. So Black Americans have to fill in the spot of the settlers. So Black Americans are the settlers. So I know it can be very triggering, but this conversation needs to be had, because there are still so many people who have this mindset. Whenever conversations like this comes up, the first thing I always question is, for the first part of learning or reading about history, about, how Black Americans were formed and all of that, how they were brought into the United States, the very first thing you will notice is they didn't say, come here, come and pack us, we want to go, come and carry us, we want to be there. They were forced against their will. The pain, the inhuman treatment these people went through. Some even decided to jump into the river and die than following these people to their land. Like, they decided that, you know what, I will end it here, I will cut it a short here, let's just stop it here, I'm no longer going. The pain that these people were subjected to when they got there, to now sum it up and saying that colonization is real, yes, that is fact, but there are some people who are settlers and Black Americans are settlers. Like, yeah, it's somehow. But like I said, she has apologized, but the first video has traveled as fast as you can imagine. So I don't think her apology is going to travel as fast as the first video had. This person said, to label Black people settler is a colonial theory itself. How do people forced to the Americas somehow become accomplices and labeled under such framework is beyond me, to be honest. That's why I said, if you read the very first few paragraphs of slavery and how these people were brought and taken to that land, I don't think anybody is going to be calling them settlers. This one said, yes, the Black pretendians, as she called them, are very few. Black Americans know they are not indigenous to the land of America. And I would have been cool with the video, but it felt very pointed, and my question is, where the white pretenders video at? This one said, it is the fact that Native Americans have been coming at our whole community lately for the very few pretendians. There are 40 plus million Black Americans. We don't shame them for some of their tribes owning tons of slaves, and the fact that they don't even really like Black people. Like, they don't shame them for it. But coming online to call them settlers, I feel like that is like borderline crazy. This person said that video really threw me off because she was also incorporating arguments of immigrants today being settlers. Yes, she said it as well. She said, as much as you can call the immigrants settlers, these people as well fall under the umbrella of settlers and exploiting indigenous land people, which is true. But our main topic was around Black Americans who claim to be indigenous are repeatedly using the word settler in reference to Black American was hiking me, even though she eventually clarified the history of chattel slavery. It just felt like us signaling out our demographic when there are many examples of why people would do the same exact thing. So it was almost like it was coming like an attack. It was coming like an attack. So yes, this reaction is not so much, it's a well-deserved reaction. But I see so many Black Americans actually attacking our video with so much grace. And I'm sure you guys can see from the stitches as well. And just pointing it out that you might have gotten it wrong here, but this is the reason why this is very wrong. This one said, I hate the way it's been said as a general statement. Majority of Black Americans know we are not indigenous to North America. Are there some Black Americans who say otherwise? Yes, but majority of us know we are descendants of enslaved people from Africa, and that is what it is. Let me hear what you guys think about our video and what you think about the stitches and what people have been saying. And I'm going to see you in the next one.